Check marks come up. All right, we're good. All right, we'll give people a second to find it here.
Morning.
Good morning. All right, so we're doing things a little differently. Not in the StreamYard studio. We're here in Franklin at the coffee house at Second and Bridge. TNHoller.com, at the TN Holler, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. We also have hollers hollering across the state. Thanks to your support. We appreciate it. Today we're talking to Jerri Green, councilwoman Jerri Green here in Franklin. She's here visiting us from Memphis, and she's running for governor of Tennessee. Jerri, how are you?
I'm great. What a gorgeous day you've ordered for us here
It
in
is.
Franklin.
This is beautiful. We're doing it a little different because you're here in person. So I'm not going to be able to see everybody's comments, but we do want you to comment along and let us know where you're watching from. So tell us, how did you end up in Franklin? What are you doing right now?
Barnstorming across the state. You know, this is our third trip across the state. I think we've talked to people from over 20 different counties already. So, you know, I take my weekends and I go all the way to East Tennessee and then all the way back. So we're on our way back to Memphis tonight, and you're stopping here to talk to you.
And how long have you been doing this?
We've been at this for about 2 months now. That's about it. Yeah. I told some people when we had the 3-star dinner in Nashville that I planned to run. And we really kind of officially launched a few weeks after that. So starting in August, so we did this August and September. I guess today's October, right?
So I remember I know where I was when you texted me. You were like, I'm doing a thing. And we saw the announcement a couple months back where you told a group of people that you're running for governor. What was it that made you decide, you know what, this is the thing that I need to do?
Well, you know, people have told me they think it's, you know, courageous or thank me for running or something, but it just feels necessary. You know, I have 3 kids at home that are looking back at me every day, and I want them to be future Tennesseans. I don't want them to go away, but the cost of living is high, and women are losing the right to choose what they do with their body. There's just attacks on our freedom all over the place, especially in Memphis right now. So every day I go home and I look at them and I say, what am I doing in this moment? It's a really important moment in American history as far as I'm concerned. So that's stuff.
So one of the things in this moment that's happening in Memphis is there's sort of an invasion of sorts from sending the National Guard. There's been a little bit of a split, it seems like, locally between, especially among leadership, where, you know, some groups in Memphis have said, well, it's happening, I might as well roll with it. And others have said, fuck that, frankly.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. And there were actually like 2 different press conferences. You know, there was one with the mayor and, you know, I think the police chief and the governor eventually. They've actually had 2, I think. And then there was kind of the other side of things, which I saw you were at, where it was you, Tammy Sawyer, Rep. Pearson, Justin Pearson. So tell me how you're thinking about that, and also how you would be reacting if you were governor.
So Councilman Smiley and I, he and I are, of course, both lawyers, and the rule of law is important to us. And so we got together and wrote a resolution asking Governor Lee to reject sending troops into Memphis, to ignore what Trump was doing. We got a lot of community support. You saw at that press conference from a lot of different groups from all over Memphis. And it was really simple to me, you know, as somebody who studied law at Georgetown. We didn't overthrow one monarchy to replace them with another. And that's what we see happening in this presidency. We're slowly eroding into an authoritarian regime, and we can't stand idly by and not speak up. I understand the pragmatism of others that are saying, well, if they're coming, let's figure out what they're going to be doing so that they don't harm people in Memphis. But I think it is harmful to our underlying values as Americans to allow troops to invade our streets. So we had that. The resolution died on a tie, as you say, very divided. And we did have another vote. One council member was overseas, and I think if he had been here, he was one of the sponsors, it would have passed. Anyway, it was disappointing, to say the least. What I would do if I was governor that is different is what you see in Illinois, saying, no, I'm not going to roll over. I'm not going to kowtow to the dear leader in the DC swamp and just do whatever he decides because he heard some crazy story from somebody that we should send troops in. It's so disconcerting to me because every blue dot in every red state is up next unless we get Democratic governors in place. Little Rock, Miami, Atlanta, St. Louis, I could go on. All of those states have governors that are willing to do the bidding of Donald Trump. And, frankly, Marsha Blackburn or John Rose or whoever on the Republican side would be happy to do it too. So it's very important that in this election, we get a Democrat into that seat, into the governor's house, so we can help push back. Because you got to have leaders that have backbone in this day and age.
Yeah. Well, it seems like the spirit of why they say they're supporting is, crime, right? But what we've seen from our perspective is, Tennessee supermajority, they only care about crime insofar as they'll lock more people up. They won't actually do anything to get out in front of the problem to address rampant poverty. They deny that there's even a link between poverty and crime. So, when you see people like this acting like this is all just a good faith effort to tackle the crime problem, when you've had a front row seat in Memphis, what do you think about that?
Well, recently I did a ride along with a police officer before we knew the troops would be coming or that they were going to make these announcements. And, I saw a man who was schizophrenic and off his meds that had to be taken to a mental hospital, but he was attacking his mom. The National Guard troops aren't going to help with that. We saw women who were being trafficked, prostitutes. They needed a living wage and affordable housing. National Guard's not going to help with that. Over and over again, everything we talked about that he saw on a daily basis, whether it was domestic violence incidents that happen in homes, the National Guard's not going to help with that. The gun violence that we see in Memphis, talk about something the supermajority could do, right? We put on the ballot last year 3 referendums for Memphians to say, hey, I would like universal background checks. I would like to have safe storage laws. Very common sense things, right? I don't want you to be able to carry an assault rifle in front of my kid's school, which, by the way, is happening. And there's nothing we can do because the laws in the states will see. Because our current governor signed open carry in a Beretta factory. When we put them on the ballot first, they tried to stop us and threatened to take away all of our sales tax funds to defund the poorest city in the state. We fought them back in court and we won. We got it on the ballot, and every single referendum passed with over 80% approval. That means Democrats and Republicans. That means NRA members and not. We all agree that if we could actually address the root causes of gun violence by dealing with the guns in common sense ways, then we could have an impact on what's actually happening on the streets. So at the end of that night, when I rode along with the police officer, I asked him directly, and I said, do you think we need National Guard troops here to help with crime? He said, no, I think we need some changes in some of our laws. That's about it. I'll take his word over Marsha Blackburn and Donald Trump any day of the week. They haven't even walked our streets, so they don't.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting how he signed that proclamation. It was just Marsha and Haggard. And there wasn't anybody local from Memphis. They won't even have a town in Memphis. There were no black people in the office of the room. So, I think that really says a lot about the spirit of what's going on there. And then we just saw there was this really crazy event that Hegseth and Trump had. And one of the things that Trump said.
Live, y'all, it's loud.
Live. You might want to check the comments to make sure they're saying they can hear us also. You did? Okay, good. So, one of the things Trump said just now at this extremely creepy thing that just happened at this event was he was talking to all four generals, and he said, the Constitution says against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And he really highlighted that it talks about the domestic enemies part. Basically telling the generals to get ready for him to issue orders to shoot Americans, right? For the military to shoot Americans. pair that with the idea that we have now a National Guard coming to Memphis. Let's say something terrible happens. Let's say we have a Kent State moment in Memphis. Aren't the people who rolled with this going to kind of own that? Like, are people not understanding how dramatic this moment is that are saying, well, let's just go with it?
Well, if you haven't studied history, then you can't learn from it, right? And there was actually somebody was pointing out to me the other day, there was a very similar thing that happened in Nazi Germany when the head general brought all the other generals in and said, your allegiance is no longer to the country and to our laws, but to Hitler.
That is literally what Hegseth just said. One of the highlights of his speech was, "You serve at the pleasure of the president every day." That's literally what he said.
And so that's kind of how things happen that are. I feel like sometimes people, this is the most important election ever, and democracy's on the line, and we say that a lot, but we're really watching it happen in slow motion. And that's why, I've tried to push back in the ways that I can. I've tried to speak out. That's why I'm running for office, because I've never seen a moment in our American history this critical to wondering if our democracy is going to survive it. What they've done with the Supreme Court, what they're doing with the Department of War, because we have to be like super macho and everything's about war, right? All of that, the daily chaos is not an accident. It is exhausting, and they want you to be tired, right? They want you not to have the energy to fight back. And we've really got to fight back in this moment. But I'm terrified. They say, again, that the troops that are coming to Memphis won't be armed, but everything changes every day. Governor Lee at first was, I'm not going to send troops. Then it was, I'm considering it. Then it was maybe for 30 days. Now it's indefinitely. So, I don't trust his word. And I don't trust that Trump won't see they're not armed and tell Bill Lee, hey, why don't they have tanks rolling through the streets?
Especially when the election.
Exactly.
So it seems like we're kind of here for that eventuality. The sort of, I don't want to give her any credit, but on the other side, it seems like whoever comes out of the Democratic primary is going to be up against Marsha Blackburn. Marsha recently named you, which is someone that we didn't see that we do with Gloria. I ran against her briefly for Congress. She certainly didn't do that with me. So
I must be polling better than we thought.
What did you take from her mentioning you by name the other day?
I think we're a serious threat. And I think they're seeing what's happening around the country in Ruby Red, Iowa, or in Virginia, or whatever. The swings towards Democrats, the overperforming of where Kamala was, every place is performing 10 to 20 points higher than they expect. Bredesen, the last time he ran against her, got 44%. Gloria, when she ran against her most recently, got 34%. You add 15 to that, either we're winning or it's neck and neck. So they want to pretend like this is a ruby red state. I'm telling you it's not. We have traveled in places, tiny, tiny places, that Rome County we were at had 300 people. Waverly had 200. Beth Page had like 100, 150. People are coming out and they're driving for hours. I went to Loudon this past weekend and there were multiple people that came to me and said, I drove for 3 hours to be here tonight to hear from you. People are energized and ready, and they want to see a change. And it's not just this big democracy stuff too. It's kind of back to James Carville. It's the economy, stupid. A lot of Republicans are turned off by the craziness and the chaos, and they would like some. I keep saying our slogan should be make government boring again. They would really like to know what the markets are doing. But everyday people, every place we've been, I have had people cry in my arms, and I'm not exaggerating. And it's because of things like I had a woman who was pregnant who brought her 2 sons and her husband. Her sons were 4 and 6. And she spoke out about the immigration tactics with ICE on social media. And she lost her job that she had had for 18 years. Inspired for it. I met a woman that she's taking care of her aunt who's had multiple strokes and has an amputated leg. And she can't afford to get a wheelchair ramp built because the cost of everything is up. And they've cut the benefits in Medicaid back up. So people are feeling it in their everyday lives, whether it's losing your job or not being able to afford health care, or every week you've got kids. I've got a teenager. You just wait. I've got 2 teenagers, and when you go to the grocery store every week, it's shocking how much everything's going up. And so really these everyday issues are impacting so many Tennesseans. That's why we were named recently the most miserable state. You know, that's the thing. Yes, there is this larger fight that we need to be fighting and we need to be pushing back against. But day to day, life is hard out here for Tennesseans. And they want someone who's not going to make it harder. And Marsha Blackburn doesn't have a record of helping Tennesseans. Certainly not every day. Maybe if you're a billionaire, she'll help you. But she's fought against women's rights. She has continued to give pharmaceutical industries more favor than actual people, and led to an incredible opioid crisis that has led to deaths here. You know, that's the sort of things that people are just sick of. They want money out of politics. They want people to focus on actual people and just make their lives livable again.
Well, that opioids thing, you should absolutely bring that up because, I think she wrote the bill or something that tied the hands of the NDA that fueled the opioid crisis. She's got a lot of blood on her hands when it comes to that. And then I'm wondering, have you heard from farmers at all? Because one of the things that just happened this week, and I actually just did a live stream about it right before I came here, was Rusty Grills from West Tennessee. He led a letter they just wrote to Trump and basically saying,
we need a bailout.
Right. He's like, we're in a crisis. Farmers are getting crushed. But the letter was not, please stop the tariffs that are doing this. It was actually praising the tariffs in the letter. It was blaming Biden and China and asking for a bailout, which, under any other circumstances, they would be criticizing as socialism.
That's right. That'd be socialism.
Right. So have you heard from farmers at all? And, what should farmers be thinking when they look at people like Rusty and Marsha, who won't say anything about what the tariffs are doing to them?
Well, they're getting hit on so many fronts. Tariffs is one of them. So not only can they not sell their products abroad, China's not buying any soybeans and all of that. Also, the tariffs on their equipment is making things incredibly expensive. And we're also doing immigration raids. That means farm workers are not there and so we're going to just plow over fields, which means your tomato's going to cost more, right? Your steak's going to continue to cost more, whatever it is. So it may take a while. If they don't do a bailout, we're going to see multi-generational farms go under. So it is an incredible crisis that is going to impact. And when a farm that helps other workers and all of that, it hurts a whole community when a farm goes under. I think that they are much like many other Americans, many other Tennesseans. They are slowly starting to see my utility bill's higher, my healthcare premiums are going up. There's just not a place you can turn and find any relief right now. Remember, the cost of eggs were going to go down day one. They have not. I have a senior center in my council district, and I went to tour it. They give birthday parties when you get 90 and over, and then they have a big one for people who turn 100. They were using Sprite instead of eggs in the cake because they couldn't afford eggs. So I think it works, but
Right, instead of eggs.
it's not good for
that. Don't want that instead.
But it's not good, especially for our seniors.
Actually, I know that's not the point, but now I want to go try Sprite and cake instead of eggs.
But I had to go back and fight to pull the budget for our senior centers in our budget this past year and ask for an extra $50,000 so that they could, because we're number one in the nation in Memphis for senior hunger. That means seniors often only get one meal, and this could be their
Child
meal.
hunger, I think, close.
Yes,
Yeah.
1 in 5 Tennessean children go to bed hungry, and we're cutting SNAP. We're draping ourselves in the Bible, which tells you to love your neighbor, but we're going to let you go hungry and not take care of you when you're sick. That doesn't make any sense. We're going to say, welcome the stranger, but we're going to rip families apart and send them off to foreign countries or Alligator Alcatraz, wherever it is. And I think that's wrong. They also continue to drape themselves in the American flag and then tear apart, free speech and the right to assemble and just basic freedoms that I think make America great.
So you're touching on something there. I think Democrats often focus so much on the separation of church and state that we don't meet people where they are, especially in the state as far as their faith goes. I think you're seeing a lot of messages like telling people, even Pete's pretty good at this, that
Andy Bashir.
Bashir, I mean, Pearson, Jones, that like speak the language of faith. I'm sure talk to people about that. You know, what's your background? First of all, I think people might want to know that, and then also like, how do you feel about how Dems should approach the intersection of faith and politics? Period.
So I grew up, I went to church by myself. My mom had been disenchanted with her church, but I went to Second Baptist on Walnut Grove. I was baptized at 13, which is really old in the Baptist church if you don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I sat in the back because I took it really seriously with this elderly couple, Harold and Mary. Harold was in a wheelchair, so he had to be in the back row. I didn't sit with the other kids. I took it really seriously, and I learned a lot of great things there, and a lot of what I am and how I give back and how I see the world is through that lens. And so I think we have to talk about it. I mean, most people here go to church, go to temple. They have some sort of faith, and we've got to meet people where they are. We've got to stop talking like intellectuals. We've got to stop using like woke language or whatever, all of that, and just be normal people. So the thing that I keep,
I also don't want to like let them win that fight though, because they plant that type of woke stuff.
yeah, what
I know what you're saying.
you know what? Somebody asked me, they're like, "What's the definition of woke?" And I said, "It's the opposite of asleep."
That's right. That's right. I'm proudly woke. I just want to make sure I say that.
But I mean, that's what, like, you talk about meeting people where they are. It's just about talking about the things that, like your faith.
Yeah.
People ask me, how can you do this? How can you beat Marsha? I often compare it to David versus Goliath. Nobody believed in David, and he was outmatched by this giant who had better armor and better weapons. David just had a slingshot, right? And he won, and he went on to be a great leader. Sometimes you have to take the leap of faith. Maybe you can't see it, right? But you've got to believe it. And so I think it's important for us to talk about that, to talk about patriotism. We are patriots. Patriots believe what the founding fathers believe, which is we're not into dictators, right?
And it's not unpatriotic to want your country to change for the better.
No,
Unpatriotic would be giving up on it.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we've got to continue to improve and evolve, but that doesn't mean giving up on the basic freedoms that we were founded on.
So, just to kind of bring it to a little bit of a close here, what do you want people to know about your campaign and why they should get involved?
Well, I hope they get involved because my slingshot's going to be people.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me on the holler. It's been a while since we've done this, but being able to get our message out, whether it's, sharing on social media or talking to your friends, all of that's going to be important. Next year, we'll turn it into door knocking and phone banking and writing postcards. That's all going to take people power. I'll never have the NRA money that Marsha Blackburn gets, right? Purposely so. So I need people to chip in where they can. I'm not asking everybody to do everything, but everybody can do something, right? So I want you to get involved because when you have somebody in the governor's seat that can push back against Trump, you can help save democracy. And if you elect someone like me that cares more about families than billionaires, we're going to be able to help everybody's daily life.
I want to ask you one more thing. Marsha does no town halls, hasn't done one in 8 years since 2017. Fairview lied and said those people there want from the district to work or ID the door. Big John Rose, which he doesn't have town halls either, so he's not the best messenger for that. I digress. Are you gonna obviously challenge her to debates?
I'm ready any day, anytime.
But then also to press you a little bit further, let's say David beats Goliath, would you commit to having town halls?
I mean, that's what we do. We're going around the state right now. Sorry, we're live. Hold on. And, in small towns or big cities, I'll say, I'm going to tell you about me. I'm going to tell you about how I plan to win. And then I'm going to do something my opponents would never do, just take questions. And I take questions at every one of these. And we open up for questions 30 minutes an hour. And I stay after. If somebody, Some people don't want to talk in front of the class.
Yeah.
So I stay after and answer questions. If you don't take the questions, you don't have the answers. The only way to find real solutions to what's hurting people and what they need is to get really proximate to the problems. I learned that in my career as a public defender. I've learned it as a public servant in county government and in city council. You got to get right up next to people and say, what's going on? Tell me about it. And this is part of the thing. I do talk to my local media and everybody's like, oh, you just want press. I think it's part of the job. You got to answer their questions too. You've got to be able to be available to people. And I think that's super important. I would love to debate Marcia. I would love to be able to say, hey, let's talk about school vouchers and how I would defund them. Let's talk about the grocery tax and how I would repeal it. And have her have to stand up and say, I want to defund public schools. Have her stand up and say, I want to make it harder for you to buy your groceries. I want to say, hey, let's talk about the Medicaid expansion, Obamacare, and how I would immediately take that money back so that we can reopen our rural hospitals and alleviate some of the pain people are feeling, setting up GoFundMe's to pay for their medical bills. And have her say, nope, I don't want that, even though you already pay into it and we're just sending it to other states. I don't think she'll do it. That's fine. We'll have conversations like this. I'll go on as many podcasts and be in many places. I hope people come out. We're going to Nashville tonight. We'll be at East Nash Beer Works at 5. People, if you're in Nashville, please come out. I'll answer your questions. They're out there, and we've the young Dims and everybody. It's just a meet and greet. Come have a beer with me.
Yeah, I mean the no town halls and no debate thing. Like, I don't care what party you're in, like you should be disgusted by that. Republicans should be disgusted by that. That's just
It's the job. It's the
it's
job.
It's the job. It's just taking them for granted. It's like, how long are you gonna let Marcia take you for granted? How long is that gonna go on? So, glad you're running. I appreciate that you're running. It's not till next year, so we've got a while. So maybe we'll do this again between now and then. But just not Marcia.
Not Marcia.
Not Marcia.
Greenforgovernor.com, right?
Forgovernor.com. All right, let's go. Thanks for following everybody. And we will see you next time. We'll end the live now. You see the button?